Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Prophet Samuel 1 chapter 6 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Now, I want you to imagine an ancient, incredibly sacred relic. It's so powerful that it brings absolute triumph to its people, but at the exact same time, sudden, devastating tragedy to anybody who mishandles it. And yeah, that actually includes its own followers. That's exactly what we're going to look at today, as we track the wild, meticulous journey of the Ark of the Covenant.
Here is the roadmap for our explainer today. We'll start with context and dilemma, then move on to the unlikely test, followed by the Ark Returns, the sudden tragedy at Beth Shemesh, and finally wrap it all up with some lessons and a recap. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, Context and Dilemma. What exactly is this Philistine crisis?
So, to really grasp what's happening here, we have to look closely at the exact time frame given right at the start of the chapter, in verse 1. The text actually tells us that the Ark of the Lord had been sitting in Philistine territory for 7 agonizing months. I mean, think about that. For over half a year, these intense plagues have just been bringing their cities to a total breaking point. The Philistine leaders are, understandably, completely desperate, so what do? In verse 2, they call in their priests and their diviners, and they ask a really critical question. What shall we do with the Ark of the Lord? Tell us how we should send it back to its place. Because they know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this thing has got to go. But they desperately need to know exactly how to do it safely, without incurring any more divine wrath.
Well, the Philistine priests actually come back with some very specific and honestly highly insightful advice in verses 3 and 4. They tell their leaders, look, if you're going to return the Ark of the God of Israel, whatever you do, do not send it away empty. You absolutely must send a guilt offering along with it. Now, a guilt offering is essentially this ancient, fundamental way of acknowledging fault, seeking forgiveness, and asking for healing. And honestly, it is fascinating that these pagan priests are the ones suggesting a deeply Israelite concept here. They recognize that if they want to appease a foreign deity, they've got to observe that specific deity's protocols for honor and restitution. The priests firmly believe that by paying direct, tangible honor to Israel's God, his heavy hand might finally be lifted from them and their land.
So the leaders ask, okay, what exactly should we send? And in verse 4, the priests reply with a highly unusual, extremely specific list. They say to send 5 golden tumors, or if you're reading some older English translations, you might see the word emerods, which just means severe swellings, and 5 golden rats, or mice. I know, right? Why this totally bizarre offering? Well, they're instructed to craft 5 of each because they represent the 5 major Philistine rulers and their corresponding cities, Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. Essentially, they are taking the literal plagues that just destroyed their country, turning them into symbolic golden representations, and offering them back to God. It's their way of officially acknowledging exactly who sent the affliction in the first place and exactly why they're finally returning the Ark. This whole exchange brilliantly illustrates the deep historical awareness these ancient nations actually had. In verse 6, the Philistine priests issue this sharp warning to their rulers. Why do you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh did? They are literally referencing the Exodus, an event that happened hundreds of years before this. They remember exactly how God treated the Egyptians so harshly until they finally broke down and let the Israelites go. The priests are basically pleading with their leaders here, saying, listen, do not be stubborn like Pharaoh, or our nation is going to be utterly decimated, just like Egypt was.
Which brings us to Section 2, the unlikely test. Let's look at this wild divine experiment. So, the Philistines definitely want to send the Ark back, but they still want to be absolutely 100% sure that it was actually the God of Israel causing their plagues, and not just, a crazy streak of terrible random luck. To figure this out, they devise this incredibly specific, highly unnatural experiment. Let's walk through the exact steps of this test from verses 7 and 8. First, they have to build a brand new cart. This is a big deal. It shows immense respect because it's never been used for any common everyday tasks. Second, they are told to hitch 2 milking cows to it that have never been yoked before. Third, they have to take those cows' calves away and pen them up back at home. Fourth, load up the Ark and that chest of golden offerings onto the cart. And fifth, just let them go. Now, really think about how completely unnatural this test is. Cows that have never pulled a cart are naturally going to buck and resist the yoke. But even more importantly, maternal instinct demands that a mother cow is going to stay with her nursing calf, right? To expect them to just walk away from their crying babies goes entirely against their very nature.
In verse 9 spells out the logic of this test perfectly. The Philistines say, okay, keep your eyes on it. If the cart goes up the road, heading into its own territory, straight toward the Israelite town of Beth Shemesh, then we will know for a fact that the Lord is the one who brought this massive disaster on us. But if it doesn't, if the cows just wander around aimlessly, or, as you'd expect, they immediately turn right back around to find their penned-up calves, then we'll know it actually wasn't his hand that struck us at all. It was just a total coincidence. So basically, they've set up an impossible standard for any natural animal to meet. Now let's move to section 3, the Ark Returns, and the incredible journey to Beth Shemesh.
The Philistines follow the plan to the letter. They hitch up the cows, lock up the calves, load the ark onto the cart, and then they just step back to see what happens. And verse 12 gives us the miraculous result. The text says the cows went straight up towards Beth Shemesh, keeping right on the road, lowing all the way. They didn't turn to the right or to the left. Honestly, notice that powerful little detail there, lowing all the way. They were physically crying out for their calves, fighting every single ounce of their own natural maternal instinct. Yet some unseen divine hand was guiding them perfectly straight toward Israel. It was so unbelievable that the 5 rulers of the Philistines actually followed them all the way to the border, just to witness this undeniable miracle with their own 2 eyes.
Meanwhile, let's shift our perspective over to the Israelites. In verses 13 through 15, the people of Beth Shemesh are down in the valley, sweating it out, hard at work harvesting their wheat. Suddenly, they look up, and to their absolute amazement, they see the Ark of the Covenant just rolling right back to them. You can only imagine the profound relief and the uncontainable joy they must have felt in that moment. The cart comes right into the field of a man named Joshua and stops perfectly beside a large rock. The people don't waste a second. They immediately chop up the wood of the cart and sacrifice those cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. And this is key. The Levites, who are the specific tribe designated by the Torah to handle holy objects, they step in to carefully take down the ark and the chest of gold objects, placing them securely on that large rock.
But this brings us to section 4. Tragedy at Beth Shemesh, a truly fatal mistake.
Up until this exact moment, everything has been this massive, joyous celebration. But verse 19 delivers a sudden, shocking blow. God strikes down the men of Beth Shemesh. The text states that he puts 70 of them to death, though it's worth noting that some ancient manuscripts actually record that number as 50,070. But either way, it is a massive, absolutely devastating loss of life, right in the very middle of their joyous harvest and homecoming. The people mourn heavily because of this severe, completely unexpected blow from the Lord. So the big question is, why? Why did this profound joy turn to instant tragedy? Well, the text gives us the exact, simple reason. They were struck down specifically because they looked into or gazed upon the Ark of the Lord. They took the absolute most sacred object on the face of the earth, the literal dwelling place of God's presence, and they treated it like a common curiosity. They completely lacked reverence. You see, the Ark was never meant to be a spectacle. It wasn't a tourist attraction or some neat museum piece to gawk at. It required incredibly strict boundaries and a deep, holy respect, protocols which the men of Beth Shemesh completely ignored in their excitement. In the horrific aftermath of all this, the survivors in Beth Shemesh are just absolutely terrified. In verse 20, they ask this profound, trembling question: who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God, and to whom will the Ark go up from here? They suddenly realize that the holiness of God isn't just this weapon that defeats the Philistines, it's an absolute consuming fire. They recognize that they themselves are completely unequipped to host the Ark properly. They're just filled with total fear at the sheer, unapproachable holiness of what is currently sitting right there in their field. Because of this intense, paralyzing fear, we see in verse 21 that the men of Beth Shemesh send messengers to a neighboring town up in the hills called Kiriath Jearim. And they essentially say, hey, the Philistines have returned the Ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to your place. They are literally begging another Israelite city to come and take the holy Ark away from them. I mean, they went from being overjoyed to utterly terrified in a single afternoon, completely afraid of the deadly consequences of ever mishandling it again. Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, Lessons and Recap. Let's look at the practical takeaways here. We've just walked step by step through the simple text of Prophet Samuel 1, chapter 6. So, what are the practical life lessons we can actually take away from this? First, the absolute necessity of deep reverence for the sacred. We simply cannot treat the things of God casually, period. Second,
Holy objects and holy spaces require strict boundaries. Yes, the men of Beth Shemesh rejoiced, and that was a good, natural response, but they crossed a fatal boundary by casually gazing upon the ark. Third, good intentions do not replace obedience. You can be super happy and completely well-meaning, but you still have to follow the rules of respect. And finally, as we saw with the Philistines, even the bitterest enemies of God must eventually acknowledge his immense power and sovereignty.
Just to cement all of this in your mind, here's a rapid chronological recap of our explainer today. Step 1. The Philistines suffer under severe plagues and seek a desperate solution from their priests. Step 2. They execute that very specific, entirely unnatural cow and cart test to see if God is truly behind it all. Step 3. The cows miraculously walk straight into Israel, leading to a joyous return at Beth Shemesh. And Step 4. A fatal lack of respect by the Israelites ends in a massive tragedy, causing them to send the ark away in total fear.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. How do we show proper respect and establish boundaries for what is sacred in our own lives today? In a modern world that treats almost everything casually, how do we actually protect our reverence for the holy? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.